Thank you, Stockton. It looks to me like Stockton is ready for a political revolution. This is a fantastic turnout, and I thank all of you very, very much for being here this morning. Let me thank John Michelson, Grupo La Meta, well-dressed mannequins, Janelle Eisen, Michael Sarasso, City Councilman Michael Tubbs. And let me thank Erica Andiola. Coming here to Stockton this morning, I don't have to tell you that this country faces many, many serious crises. And what this campaign is about is thinking outside of the box, thinking outside of the status quo, and saying that in America, we can transform this nation if we stand together. What this campaign is saying that from coast to coast, people are sick and tired of millions of Americans living in poverty. They are tired of having a nation in which we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. They want us to invest in our young people, in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. This campaign is listening to the people of America, not just big money campaign contributors. And what the people of this country are telling us is they are tired of a corrupt campaign finance system which allows billionaires to buy elections. They want America to have the strongest democracy in the world with the highest voter turnout, not one of the lowest. And they understand that democracy is one person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections. What the political revolution is about is creating a government which represents all of us, not just the 1%. Now, what does that mean? What it means is that if you work 40 hours a week in this country, you should not live in poverty. It means that we are going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. It means that women in America will not make 79 cents on the dollar. And I know, because everybody here believes in justice, that we are going to fight together, every man, to make sure that we have pay equity for women workers. And I know, nationally they tell us unemployment is 5%. That's official unemployment. Real unemployment is double that. And in communities like Stockton, Detroit, and all over this country, the numbers are much higher. I was in Flint, Michigan a few months ago, and children there have been poisoned by lead in the water. infrastructure. That means our water systems, not only in Flint, but all over this country, are failing the American people. Our wastewater plants, our roads, our bridges, our rail system, our levees and our dams need repair. We are going to create 13 million decent paying jobs rebuilding our infrastructure. We are going to put the American people back to work at good wages. I want our young people not to be hanging out unemployed on street corners. I want them to learn the skills they need to build affordable housing, to make sure that our schools are well structured. We need a new trade policy which says to corporate America, invest in this country, not in China. This campaign is listening to young people. And what young people are saying is, we will not allow the American dream to die. My father came to this country with no money, never made any money. We grew up in a lower income household. But he worked hard and my mom worked hard and millions of parents worked hard so their kids could do better than they did. That's called the American dream. And if we do not change the economy and create millions of decent paying jobs, for the first time in the modern history of this country, the younger generation will have a lower standard of living than their parents. We will not allow that to happen. You know, 50 years ago, you had a high school degree. You could go out and get a pretty good job and make it into the middle class. The world has changed. The economy has changed, technology has changed, and education has changed. And in my view, it is no longer good enough to be talking about public education, meaning first grade through 12th grade. Not good enough anymore. Our vision has got to be that public education means making public colleges and universities tuition free. Here is what thinking big is about. It is saying that every child in Stockton, in the 4th grade, in the 6th grade, who studies hard, who does well in school, every kid in Burlington, Vermont, my hometown, where kids are living with parents who never went to college, where kids today never think for 1 second that they have the possibility of going to college because they're poor or working class. I want to change that. In America today, every child, regardless of the income of his or her family, if that kid takes school seriously and does well, that child should have the right to get a college education. And that is how we transform America, when we have the best educated workforce in the world, not when we have more people in jail than any other country. How many of you are dealing with student debt? All right, thinking outside of the box requires you to ask a simple question. Everybody here knows, everybody in America knows that education is the essence of what life is about. We got to keep learning until the day we die. And everybody here knows that if we are going to compete effectively in the global economy, we need a well-educated workforce. Why are we punishing people for getting the education they need? We should be rewarding people, not punishing people for getting an education. So for those of you who are being crushed by student debt, and I've talked to people all over this country, woman in my own city, her dream to go to medical school, she did, $300,000 in debt. Woman in Iowa, her dream becoming a dentist, $400,000 in debt. Young people dropping out of college, $50,000, $60,000 in debt. That is crazy. That is not what this country should be about. So here is my promise to people with student debt. We're going to let you refinance those loans at the lowest interest rates you can find. You should not be paying 6, 8, 10% interest rates if you can get loans at 2, 3, 4% interest rates. When we talk about the economy today and when we think outside of the box, we have to deal with issues that are not going to be seen in corporate television or in corporate media. We have got to determine as a people what the most important moral issues, economic issues, and political issues are. Nobody's going to do it for us. Big money interests are not going to do it. We have got to do it. And here is at the top of my list, both a moral, economic, and political issue. Are we satisfied when in this great country we have more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth? Does anybody think that it is morally acceptable that the top 0.1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%? Does anybody think it is morally or economically sustainable when the 20 wealthiest people in this country, 20 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million Americans? When you have this grotesque level of income and wealth inequality, when you have a situation where over the last 25 years, trillions of dollars have left the hands of working families and have gone into the top 0.1%. Don't tell me we don't have the resources to rebuild Stockton, California. This is, brothers and sisters, this is the wealthiest country in the history of the world, but nobody knows it. Nobody knows it because cities like Stockton are suffering because people are working 2 or 3 jobs. The problem is not our wealth. The problem is who has that wealth. And we are going to create together an economy that works for all of us, not just the top 1%. That's what this campaign is about. Now, I want to give you an example of what a corrupt campaign finance system is about and what a rigged economy is about. People of Stockton know Wall Street very, very well. You know what Wall Street's greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior has done to this community. Now, some of you may not know that just about a month ago, a major Wall Street financial institution called Goldman Sachs reached a settlement with the United States government for $5 billion. Other large banks reached even bigger financial settlements with the government. Why? Why did they do this? They did it because, as you all know, they were selling worthless packages of subprime mortgage loans.
Backed by taxpayers. Send us.
And yet, Goldman Sachs, that paid a $5 billion settlement,
Shameful.
their executives, not one of them has been charged with a crime.
They should be in jail.
You know, some kid here in California gets picked up today for possession of marijuana.
Gone.
That kid gets
Lock 'em up.
a police record that stays with him his entire life. And by the way, that's why I think you got a pretty good ballot initiative coming up in November. But on the other hand, if you are an executive on Wall Street whose greed and illegal behavior has impacted the lives of millions of Americans who lost their jobs here in Stockton, their homes, their life savings, you know what happens to you?
Karma.
You get an increase in your compensation. Well, you know what we're going to do? How about bringing justice back to a broken criminal justice system? How about telling Wall Street that they have got to obey the law like everybody else? And how about telling Wall Street that when 6 financial institutions have assets equivalent to 58% of the GDP of this country, when they issue 2/3 of the credit cards and 1/3 of the mortgages, that maybe they are just too big and we're going to break them up? Right. We need a financial system which works for small and medium-sized businesses, which makes affordable loans, which helps those businesses create the jobs we desperately need. We don't need a Wall Street, which is an island unto itself, which is based on fraud and is only concerned about their own profits. We do need to break them up. And when we talk about a broken criminal justice system, this is what I mean by that. What I mean is that all over this country, in inner cities and in rural America, you got youth unemployment rates of 30, 40%. And when kids hang out on street corners with nothing constructive to do, trouble happens. And that is why we are going to invest in our young people in jobs. I want these kids working. And when we talk about reforming a broken criminal justice system, we've got to take a hard look at local police departments all over this country. I'm a former mayor of Burlington, Vermont. I have worked with police officers of my city, my state, and people all over this country. And the average police officer is honest, hardworking, and has a very difficult job. But like any other public official, when a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. We have got to demilitarize local police departments. We have got to make police departments reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. We have got to end corporate ownership of jails and detention centers. We have got to create a culture in law enforcement which says that lethal force, killing someone, is the last response, not the first response. We have got to rethink the so-called war on drugs. Right now, under federal law, we have the Federal Controlled Substance Act, which has marijuana as a Schedule I drug right next to heroin. If elected president, we will take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. And if a vote comes up in Vermont to legalize marijuana, as it might, I will vote yes on that vote. But we also have to recognize when we talk about drugs that we have a major crisis all over this country in terms of opiate addiction and heroin addiction. Every single day, people are dying of overdoses. And we got to deal with this issue. And the best way to deal with it, for a start, is to recognize that drug abuse and addiction is a health-related issue, not a criminal issue. And that means we need a revolution in how we do mental health treatment in America. If somebody is addicted, they need help today, not 6 months from now. If somebody is suicidal or homicidal, we need to get them the treatment they need right now. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Latino community. And the Latino community reminds us that there are 11 million undocumented workers in this, 11 million undocumented people in this country today. And here is the truth. Many of those workers who are undocumented are being exploited. And they are being exploited because when you have no legal rights, your employer can do anything he wants to you. He can cheat you. He can deny you the wages that you earn, and you have no recourse. You cannot stand up and fight back because you are undocumented. I have talked to people in the Latino community who are living in the shadows, who are living in fear. We need comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. If Congress does not do its job in passing immigration reform, I will use the executive powers of the presidency to do everything that I an immigration policy which speaks to bringing families together, to uniting families, not dividing families. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the African American community. They are asking me, how does it happen, Bernie, that we have trillions of dollars we could spend on a war in Iraq that we never should have gotten into? But we have inner cities all over this country where unemployment sky high, incarceration rates sky high, schools, healthcare totally inadequate. We need to change our national priorities. No more wars that we should not be fighting. No more tax breaks for billionaires. Let's rebuild. Let's rebuild the inner cities of America, improve lives there, and create millions of jobs as we do that. This campaign is listening to a people whose pain is almost never heard, and that is our brothers and sisters in the Native American community. Now, I don't have to tell anybody here who has studied 5 minutes of American history that from the very beginning, before this country was a country, when the first settlers came here, the Native American people were lied to, were cheated, and the treaties they negotiated were broken. We owe the Native American people a debt that we can never fully repay. They have taught us and have become part of our culture in making us understand, for example, that as human beings, we are part of nature. We have got to coexist with nature. And that if we destroy nature, we are destroying the human species. And yet, in reservations and Native American communities throughout this country, our Native American brothers and sisters are hurting. Unemployment, poverty, youth suicide, off the charts. If elected president, we will change our relationship to the Native American people. Think outside of the box and ask yourselves a very simple question. Why is it that the United States of America is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a right? United Kingdom does it, France does it, Germany does it, Holland does it, Scandinavia does it. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. Everybody in Canada has health care as a right. Now, I'm a member of the committee that helped pass the Affordable Care Act. It has done some very important things, but not enough. Today, 29 million people have no health insurance. Today, millions of people, including many of you here, are underinsured with high deductibles and high co-payments. Am I right? Today, every person here and in America is being ripped off by the greed of the pharmaceutical industry. An industry that charges us by far the highest prices in the world for the medicine that we need. Now, by the way, California, you're going to have a proposition on your ballot in November which is going to lower the cost of prescription drugs. It's a great idea. Last year, while the American people were unable to afford the medicine they need, the pharmaceutical industry, the three top drug companies, made $45 billion in profit. And I have no doubt that they're going to be spending some of that money in California telling you not to support that proposition. Don't listen to them. In my view, and let me repeat to you what I have believed for my entire life, health care is a right of all people. It's not a privilege, and I want you to understand, think outside of the box, what a Medicare for All single-payer program will mean to the people of Stockton. What it means is you go to the doctor whenever you need to go, and you don't worry what kind of deductible or copayment you have. It means that the medicine, prescription drugs that you need are there at a cost that you can afford. And here's what it also means. It means today that millions of Americans are working at jobs where they don't want to be, but they are there because they have decent health insurance for their families. When we have a Medicare for All single-payer system, you could